Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Little Grapevine's Executive Chat. I'm your host, Ed Gilmore. Today's episode is being recorded on Wednesday, October 14th, 2020. In a few moments, we'll be talking to Crexendo President and Chief Operating Officer, Doug Gaylor. Crexendo has previously presented to Little Grapevine Community, and we're excited to have Doug back for another update. For new listeners, Crexendo's ticker symbol is CXDO. Crexendo currently has a market cap of roughly 93 million trades on the NASDAQ. Crexendo provides unified communications, cloud telecom, broadband internet, and other cloud business services for businesses in North America and around the world. Doug, I'd like to welcome you back and good to talk to you this afternoon.
Thanks, Ed. Always great to be part of the Little Grapevine community and excited to be here for our little fireside chat.
Thanks, Doug. Also joining me today on the call is GeoInvesting co-founder and managing partner, Soueidan. Maj is an expert in microcap investing and offers a unique perspective in discovering and understanding quality microcap companies. Maj shares his research and trade ideas with subscribers at geoinvesting.com. And Maj, it's good to speak with you again, too.
Hey, thanks, Ed. I don't know about an expert, but thanks anyway. Been glad to be here and watching part of this, and it's been nice watching Little Grapevine grow over the last year or so as you profile high quality companies. A lot of those companies are actually on GeoInvesting too, so it's nice to see the cross pollination there.
Maj, before we get started, why did we invite Doug for an executive chat today, and what's your overall view of microcaps and small cap investing right now?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's my view as well as the view of the that we talked about GeoInvesting, that Doug's company is maybe an inflection point as a provider of unified communications service, software services in the platform. And the whole industry really has changed somewhat since the beginning of COVID. And it's an industry that was already growing nicely and forecast to grow nicely as smaller companies started adopting the cloud and taking their communication systems to the cloud away from on-premise solutions. And Doug's company, along with a few other ones that we cover at Geo, kind of are playing in that small to medium-sized business space where they're attacking it in different ways. And we like the way Crexendo's attacking it in their unique way. They've gone through so we're just curious to see here, how is, what has COVID done to the industry. Doug talked about it before. It's been a while since we talked to him, so great to get a business update on that. I know Crexendo just completed a secondary offering to raise some money, maybe to kind of help with growth initiatives. We want to get a long idea on how Doug felt about the offering and what they're going to do with the money. And really, but what we really want to start this out, I think, is to really get a perspective of, what Doug. I'm glad to be part of this. I always ask in my interviews with management is like, tell me about your life, how you got to where you are today, even before you joined the company. Does it help investors connect with the management to understand, hey, they're qualified for what they're doing here? Because a lot of smart managers aren't qualified. So that's why we're here today, or why I'm here today at least. Getting a little greedy. Greedy right. for information.
Thanks, Maj. The audio is breaking up just a little bit there, so I'll flag you if we might need to have you say a couple of things again. But I think we got it. If not, we'll come back to that. But Maj, thanks again for going over that. And Doug, like I said, we're excited to welcome you back. For today's format, we're going to be asking Doug several questions, kind of in a fireside executive chat style. Some of the questions come from investors, from you, our listeners, and we're always excited when you write in with those. And also, as a reminder, today during the call, please feel free to take advantage of the chat functionality in Zoom. You can submit a question, and then either Maj or myself will make sure to get that question in front of Doug and have him get an answer. Also, if you're listening later after the event, please submit your questions for a future interview to questions@littlegrapevine.com, or feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is HeyGrapevine. Again, that's questions@littlegrapevine.com, and then also on Twitter @HeyGrapevine. And if you enjoy this content that we produce and are looking for additional quality microcap companies, please remember to visit our website, littlegrapevine.com, and check out our other virtual conferences that we host there. On Little Grapevine, you'll find a carefully curated collection of high quality companies, including additional interviews and videos from Crexendo and Doug. Also, to everyone that has joined, we appreciate your help in expanding our audience and investor community. We aspire to be the most trusted name in microcaps, and we know that you're interested in that content. And if you know someone else that you think might be interested, we appreciate if you tell them that you heard it on Grapevine. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Managing Partner of GeoInvesting, Maj Soueidan. Maj, go ahead with your first question.
Yeah. Oh, I should say that I didn't answer all your questions. I'm sorry, Ed. Earlier, you asked me about how I felt about the microcap space, and I just got away with it. Look, it's been a long time since the microcap space has had the life it's had in the last two and a half years or so, and it's really great to see that. And a lot of companies like Doug perform, higher quality companies have performed nicely in the last year and a half or so, and surprisingly, even under COVID, and why we think that is the case is because it's more relevant now than to be a good stock picker. You just can't blindly buy indexes and blindly buy stocks and not be aware of some of the inherent risks that are going on now in the economy because of COVID. So I think as that occurred, we had more of a kind of stock picking mentality come back in the market. And smaller companies are a great place to search for those type of opportunities, especially because a lot of them were so undervalued even before the COVID scenario happened. And a lot of COVID has created a lot of opportunities. It's hurt a lot of companies, obviously, but it's also created a lot of new opportunities too for companies to reinvent themselves and just attack some of the opportunities and problems that COVID has created. And small companies are nimble and they can do that. And so we're seeing a lot of great management teams kind of address that. So just wanted to get that out there. So I'm sorry I didn't answer that for you earlier, Ed.
Okay, thanks for following back up on that. And I think we'll see some of that in today's discussion with Doug. So Maj, if you want to go ahead and get started with your first question.
Was I still breaking up there? Was I still okay there?
It was, yeah, it was better towards the end. The beginning was breaking up. I'll send you a message if it breaks up. Maybe you can turn off your video if it continues.
Okay, because I'm gonna come in a bunker here, so I'm gonna have to do that. Yeah. So Doug, let's do it. Let's talk about yourself and spare no details, everything. Before you got Crexendo, from when you were a kid in college, where you went to college, how you got what you wanted to do, how your journey might have changed before you got to COVID. I mean, I'm sorry, before you got to Crexendo. And and to help us put it in perspective of your journey to Crexendo and your passion here.
I appreciate it. No, it's been a nice journey, and I'll start with just a little background on growing up. So I grew up born in New York, so I'm a Yankee fan at heart, but I grew up in Houston, so I moved down to Houston when I was 7. I grew up around the space program. My dad was the chief engineer for the lunar module project for the Apollo program, so I got to grow up around the space program, which was pretty cool. My little league in high school, or little league and soccer coach when I was growing up, was one of the astronauts that walked on the moon, and so I got to hang out around NASA for most of my younger years in Houston. And the engineering gene skipped right over me, and so my dad did that for all of his life, and my brother did that for all of his life at NASA. And I can sell you a rocket ship, but I can't build you a rocket ship. So grew up in Houston, went to University of Houston, and I graduated in '87 out of University of Houston with a communications degree, and started with a company called Intertel in Houston right out of school. And so I stayed on with Intertel for 20 plus years. So when I started with Intertel in '87, it was a $35 million company, and I started out just in the sales role and worked my way up through management. And 20 years later, I was a senior VP of the company, and we were doing $500 million in revenue. Intertel was a NASDAQ listed company. And so I saw tremendous growth there, and proud to say that I helped build that company over the years. The company was founded by a gentleman named Steve Mahalo, and Steve was the CEO and founder of Intertel. And so I worked with Steve for 20 years at Intertel until the company sold off to Mitel in 2007. And I stayed on with Mitel for about 2 years after that acquisition. The acquisition transaction price was about $750 million. And Steve had diluted himself down to about a third of the ownership of the company. And so when the deal happened, I would have thought Steve would have rode off into the sunset. And 2 years later, he called and and looked me up and said, hey, everything is moving to the cloud, and I'm going to start building a cloud communications company. I'd love to have you come help me run it. And so 2010, I left Mitel and came on board with Crexendo, and we've been building the company ever since. First 2 years, we really didn't have any revenue to speak of on the telecom side. And so, 2012, we put our first customers on the platform, and 8 years later, here we are at a $16 million run rate. So, that growth was slow and steady, but our focus was growing and growing profitably. So last year, as you said, Maj, was an inflection year for us. We hit, profitability last year. And so that's just a little bit of my background and how I got to where I am today.
Thanks, Doug. I'm going to turn my video off while I ask questions here because it might make it the audio a little better here. So let's try. So that's a great background there. I want to back up a second. So when you kind of found a Crexendo and you before you started offering UCaaS solutions, you had a web hosting type of business that was going on with the company. And I think Steve had been buying stock in Crexendo for a long time, right, before I formally kind of control over the company. I believe that's the case. So, now you have a legacy customer base in this whole business.
Hey, Maj, sorry to interrupt you, but we're losing you there on the audio too.
You
really? Doug, were you able to hear or was it breaking up?
It was breaking up. I could hear bits and pieces, but I was trying to figure out how my answer was going to fit his question. I was getting bits and pieces. I was like, maybe I can answer part of it. So
let me try. Is that any better?
That's better. Yes.
No, yeah.
All right. I'm just going to get closer to the microphone, which I'm going to be returning tomorrow. So if you Ed, if you have a problem, just put your hand up and I'll restart. So what I was saying, Doug, there was, I just want to get a step back here and talk about when Steve started first buying stock of Crexendo and before you took control and before you came and joined the company. I mean, Crexendo had its, I don't know if it was named a different business at the time. I believe it was. It wasn't Crexendo yet. Web hosting, I think, business before.
Hey, Maj, keep cutting out.
All right, why don't you give me 2 seconds, all right?
Okay.
I'm going to try and relocate here. Hold on.
While he does that, I can maybe I can answer part of the question while he's relocating that. So the company prior to myself joining and prior to Steve joining was a web services company under the name Emergent. And it was a publicly held company listed on the Amex. And then after the Amex was acquired by the NYSE Market Exchange. And so that's why we are public today, is that when Steve started investing in the company, and he started buying the stock on the open market, and they had a change in leadership in 2008, 2009 timeframe, and we're in need of a CEO, and Steve had been acquiring the stock, and Steve volunteered to be the CEO at no salary and plugged himself in as the CEO and continued buying shares on the open market. So Steve has acquired probably 95% of the shares that he owns today on the open market. And when we started taking the company from a web services company to a telecom company, basically just redeployed the assets of the existing web services company into the telecom company. But we shut down that web division really in 2010, 2011. Just because it had major challenges, it was losing money, and it was facing some major uphill battles. And so Steve's decision was to basically shut down that division and redeploy the assets to telecom. We still support the web services division, but it's a very minor part of our revenue stream today, less than 5%. And so we still support websites out there. And that revenue will slowly attrition out, but that's why you do see the market segment reporting today, and probably by the end of this year, there won't be any need for segment reporting because of the immaterial.
Well, good, Doug. And I know Maj might kind of get into this later, but while we're waiting on him, I think that's a good segue just for investors that may not be as familiar with the Crexendo story or the team. insider ownership is very high in the company, and Steve does own a lot of shares. And recently, there's been a couple of exciting developments. One, since the last time we spoke, Crexendo uplisted to the NASDAQ, which is a big accomplishment for the team, and we're excited to see that. And then also, even more recently, Crexendo did an offering. Thought maybe you could kind of talk a little bit about that, what the use of proceeds was going to be for, and kind of where the management outlook is with that for now.
Yeah, so we have had some exciting news since the last time we talked to the Little Grapevine community. So and proud to say that as I've been doing these investor conferences and meetings for the last couple of years, that we've delivered on just about everything that we've committed to. So 2.5 years ago, we were committing to getting to break even in profitability, and 2019 was that inflection year. So we were able to hit both GAAP and non-GAAP profitable levels, nice levels in 2019. So we were able to meet those objectives that we set out to our investors. And then we set out the goals of organically uplisting to the NASDAQ, and we completed that in July of this year. So July 8th of 2020, we organically uplisted from the OTC to the NASDAQ. And then with that uplist, we did that organically. And then a month and a half, 2 months later, we filed an S1 and went out and did a capital raise. That capital raise really to go out and get some extra dry powder for sales and marketing reinvestment and acquisition opportunities out there. We've been talking with the investment community about our acquisition strategy and going out and finding good accretive acquisitions. And up until the raise, the challenge we had with any acquisitions of any size or magnitude was that it was going to take a combination of cash and stock. And while we were trading on the OTC, our stock didn't have a lot of movement on it, and we didn't have tremendously deep pockets from a cash perspective. So some of the opportunities that we were talking to from an acquisition perspective didn't come through to fruition because of our positioning. And so uplisting to the NASDAQ and having a lot more liquidity in our stock today has definitely helped that part of the equation. And going out and raising nearly $10 million in cash with the offering has definitely got us some dry powder out there. So at the end of Q2, we had $5 million in cash and had consistent good cash flow over the last 6-8 quarters. And so now taking that $5 million in cash and putting another $10 million off the raise in there, we've got that dry powder. And the acquisition discussions that we've had, there's a lot of irons in the fire, but we've probably got more discussions going right now and more extremely strong discussions going right now. So I'm really excited about where some of these discussions could lead us. And with that extra capital that we've raised, we don't have too many objections that we can't overcome with some of the opportunities we're talking to.
I know from the last earnings call, Steve mentioned a couple of times that you're running point from an acquisitions perspective for Crexendo. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what's the appetite from sellers right now in this environment. Are you seeing valuation expectations kind of change or level off a little bit? And then also maybe a little bit more description, if you can, of what type of accretive acquisition you think would fit and where that would fit within your different product offerings.
Yeah, great question. And to add a little bit of color on that, our previous company, Intertel, we grew that company to $500 million. A lot of that was organic growth, but a lot of that was acquisitions. Over the course of the last probably 10 years at Intertel, we probably did upwards of 30 or 40 acquisitions. So it's not new to us. So Steve, myself, and my management team with Ron Vincent, our Chief Financial Officer, and Jeff Korn, our General Counsel, we've got tremendous experience out there going out and finding acquisitions. And so the acquisition market today, I think, is, as I said, stronger than it's ever been. There's lots of small UCaaS providers out there. And again, UCaaS stands for Unified Communications as a Service. So there's lots of small and mid-sized companies in the target range that we're looking for. And that target range is anywhere from 2 million to upwards of 15 million in revenue. And so for us, what an accretive acquisition looks like is a recurring revenue stream that's got a hosted client base that we can migrate over to our platform. And in that $2 to $15 million range, there's a lot of potential opportunities out there. If you think about our space, BroadSoft and Metaswitch are the two largest providers of platforms in our industry. BroadSoft is owned by Cisco now. They acquired BroadSoft 2 years ago. And Metaswitch is the second largest, and Microsoft acquired Metaswitch about 3 months ago. So the two largest platform providers in the UCaaS space, BroadSoft had about 750 resellers when Cisco acquired them, and Microsoft, when they acquired Metaswitch, Metaswitch had about 450 resellers out there. If you take out the biggest resellers, the Vonages and the CenturyLinks and the Verizons of the world, you've got a lot of small and mid-sized players out there. And so those are the acquisition targets that we would look at. And so somebody in just that range, to use as an example, if I were looking at somebody that was a $4 million UCaaS revenue stream out there on an annual basis, that acquisition might run us 1.5 to 2.5 times revenue. So if I just use the middle of the road there, $4 million acquisition at a 2 times revenue might be an $8 million acquisition cost. And for us, that's a very accretive type acquisition, because we would look at that customer base migrated over to our platform, have tremendous cost synergies out of taking out whatever platform they're currently residing on. And that's a very smooth transition. It's similar to going out and taking a bunch of Sprint phones and putting them on T-Mobile. It's a very simple behind the curtain type migration that we would do, and the customers wouldn't even notice too much of a bump in the road there. So for us, the acquisition strategy is to go out and find those acquisition targets. Plenty out there, and again, we've got a lot of discussions going on. So I'm confident that some of these discussions will come through to fruition, and that'll help our inorganic growth. So if we can get our organic growth, which for the previous 2 years was north of 20%, this year, for the first 6 months of the year, our organic growth was 17% on the telecom side. That's down from that 25% that we were averaging prior. But keep in mind, 6 months out of the year, 3 months was the pandemic and the shutdown. So we did see a little bit of a slowdown there, but still proud that we've got double-digit growth. And we feel like we can get that organic growth back to 25% fairly easily. And if we can put the icing on the cake there with some acquisitions and get another 20 or 30 or 40% pop on the revenue with some decent acquisitions, that'll really give us some girth out there in the marketplace.
Great. I think we got Maj back now. Maj, are you able to hear us? And do you want to ask your question again for Doug?
Yeah, thanks for waiting, guys. Is this better?
Yep.
Great. So, Doug, on that similar kind of train of thought here, we're talking about the industry a little bit here and the landscape. Then I'll get back to what I asked earlier. So, now it's been a year now, or running close to a year, I guess, on when RingCentral, made that, I guess, joint venture with Fire, right? To take all their kind of on-premise clients and maybe give them a cloud solution. So have you have any idea of how RingCentral's penetration into Avaya's customers been? Has it been going according to their plan, or you think that a lot of those customers are still up for grabs for people like you to go after?
Yeah, I think there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity there. I mean, so if we think about the timing on all of this, the RingCentral Avaya partnership was announced about a year ago at this time last year. And so, the first 3 months was all the planning stages. So the Avaya Cloud Office by RingCentral really just got kicked off, end of Q1, beginning of Q2. And so they haven't, made deep penetrations into that Avaya market at all. And so there's still plenty of opportunity out there. I would tell you that, from my personal perspective, I think a lot of the Avaya resellers out there and a lot of the Avaya customers out there are going to, do their homework and look at other options. I mean, Avaya bringing in RingCentral is no different than them looking at Crexendo or looking at 8x8 or looking at Vonage. At that point, there's really no reason for them not to look at other solutions. So although RingCentral's got the inside track because maybe Avaya's got the relationship there, it's still an up for grabs type customer. And so We are seeing a lot of conversions out there, but it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, the Avaya customer base out there, Avaya's got the largest share of telecom customers in the world today. And it's not as if they've gone out there and said, hey, you all have to move to the cloud by X date. It's going to be a slow migration. So those opportunities are out there, and we're definitely trying to hit them hard. I think when we think about what the pandemic has done for businesses out there, it's made them realize that those old Avaya systems that don't have work from anywhere type capabilities, they don't have remote phone capabilities, they don't have mobile app capabilities, they don't have collaboration capabilities. A lot of those customers are really hamstrung that they can't go out there and use the technology. So, I think the migration to the cloud, which was already fairly well paced before the pandemic, is only going to get even more fast-paced as businesses return to the new normal and try and figure out what kind of communication solutions they need to be able to adapt to the new normal.
Great. Thanks, Doug. So I want to go back now to a question I was going to ask earlier. Maybe you answered it during Ed's last question. So if I did, you had to answer it. When you first got involved with Crexendo, they had a legacy customer opposing business or wherever you were doing there. So there was a pretty large legacy customer base in there from that business. Were you able to convert customers without your plan, or did that even you got ability to use customers? Nobody.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it is breaking up. We're not able to make out that. If you want to type your question to me in Slack, I can definitely ask that to Doug.
I'll type it in. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Cool. So while he's doing that, Doug, one of the things I think that makes Crexendo unique is that Crexendo builds its own hardware and writes its own software. And that's something that is a little bit, like I said, unique in the industry, and I think potentially helpful even in like an acquisition. I wonder, just from a product perspective, is there anything new in the pipeline coming up in the next year or so that you're excited about, that that's been announced and you think is going to be helpful to the value proposition?
Yeah, we continue to enhance our platform. So obviously we've got our collaboration tools that have been out there for a while, but continue to improve. We added texting capabilities to our platform at the end of last year, and that business texting is really taken off. The reality is millennials today, 70% of millennials state that they would rather text than talk. And so when we think about business communications, it's always been about the phone and not about texting. And so now having texting capabilities to your business phone number as opposed to a personal cell phone number has really become a large portion of what we sell today. Our system comes standard with call center applications built into it. And a lot of businesses say that, hey, I don't have a call center. Well, the reality is that if you're taking calls and receiving calls, you've got a call center. You may not have a call center like Southwest Airlines, but you do have a call center. And with the work at home or work from anywhere type environment that we're in nowadays, the fact that we have call center built into our solution and we provide reports with those call center applications is really a tremendous selling feature for us. So, for example, if everybody on the screen here, if they were all my employees and they were all working remote, if they're in my office, I can walk around and do walk around management and see that my employees are plugged in, they're here on time, they're making calls, they're receiving calls. That was the norm as of January and February of this year. But when the pandemic hit and people started having to work from home, all of a sudden you had people working from home, and management had no idea if they were being as productive as they could be or needed to be. And so we offer those type of tools with our management analytics. And so, for example, if I look at the whole screen here and I see that Marcus and Aaron and Chris are my employees and they're all working from home, well, if Marcus handled 20 calls today and Aaron handled 5 and Chris handled none, I could look at that report at the end of the day and call Chris up and say, hey, Chris, were you watching Oprah all day or what's going on? How come you're not making phone calls or receiving phone calls? So it gives me those management tools and allows me to really see what's going on within my organization.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And just a reminder to everyone that's on the call today, if you do have a question for Doug, feel free to mention it in the chat. And Doug, one that came in while you were talking about that was actually from a listener named Chris also. and he was wondering if you could discuss in more detail the use of capital for your organic growth strategy.
Yeah, sure can. So obviously that capital raise, part of that's going to be earmarked for acquisitions, but part of that's going to be earmarked for organic growth. And so if we think about our sales and marketing spend versus a Ring Central, Maj mentioned Ring Central earlier with the partnership with Avaya. Yeah, Ring Central is leading the industry with a growth rate that's pretty phenomenal at 30+% year over year. But they're also spending almost 65% of their revenues on sales and marketing. So we're spending in the 30% range. They're spending twice that. So we realized that with the dry powder we've got, putting some more money into sales and marketing expenses is going to be critical for us. So you're already seeing that. We just hired an Avaya channel manager that just started this past week. So that's pretty exciting. So that'll give us an opportunity to go out and hopefully recruit some of those Avaya channel partners out there to the Crexendo team. So hiring additional channel managers that can bring a potential funnel of opportunities with potential partners to Crexendo is going to be critical. So hiring channel managers is going to be part of that component. Hiring a couple of additional direct sales reps. About 70-75% of our business today comes from our channel. About 25-30% comes from our direct sales team. And so again, hiring some additional direct sales people that can bring a funnel of opportunity to us that we can turn into customers hopefully sooner rather than later. Because as I mentioned earlier, we've got a very accretive model. So if I bring on a new customer today, they're accretive from day one. So it's about getting those customers in-house. So if I can bring on new partners with new channel managers and bring on new salespeople, that'll help those efforts. In addition, we're going to be doing a lot with our partner base out there with some sales and marketing initiatives to get the message out to their customer base. When we think about our partners today, our partners are selling typically their existing customers and their existing prospects. And so giving them better marketing tools and better ways for them to get the message out to their customer base about their Crexendo offering is going to be critical. So we've got a new director of marketing that we hired a few months back. And so we're developing marketing programs for our partners today that will roll out over the course of the next few months. That'll get our messaging and their messaging out on a co-branded basis to their customer base to tell them all the exciting things that Crexendo can do for their business.
And a follow-up from Chris too. He's wondering, do you think is that enough to get back to the 25% organic growth, or do you think there's going to be more that it takes to hit that mark?
No, I think that those 3 or 4 areas that I just described should get us back there pretty healthily. If you think about where we are today, it doesn't take much for us to move the needle. I mean, even without spending in those areas, and even with COVID, we were at 17%. So to get back into that mid-20 range, I'm fairly confident with the right spend and focus. And if you followed us for a while, that we've got a very cost management style here. So we're always focused on that ROI. So we're going to look at every aspect out there, and we're going to spend accordingly. We've got a new SEO plan and a new digital advertising plan set up to where we're going to be doing more digital advertising to get leads off of Google and Google AdWords out there. So those are being launched as we speak. I just got done completing our kickoff calls with that last week. So again, it won't take much for us to move that needle to get from the high teens to the mid-20s.
I know personally, having gone through a lot of Crexendo's sales and marketing materials, I've been getting some emails recently that say they're coming from you, and it's more of an invitation. Hey, have you decided to sign up for Crexendo service yet? And it's cool to see that more of an email marketing outreach that's coming from the team. And I think if I remember right, that you announced on the last call that you had hired a higher level marketing position within Crexendo. Is that correct?
Correct. We hired a director of marketing in Q2, and that's been extremely successful. Our first project was getting our new website launched, and that was successfully launched last month. And now the digital ad campaigns and all of our marketing pieces are next on the queue. So I'm extremely pleased with the results we're getting there.
Okay, another question comes from Marcus Dunn, and Marcus is asking, it's a good question. Is there anything that gives you sleepless nights from a management perspective or just in general, and what's your biggest worry going forward?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, what gives me sleepless nights is, as a publicly held company, we're always under the gun, and we've got to continue to raise the bar. And so when I see, the big player out there, RingCentral and 8x8 doing, 25 and 35% respectively, or irrespectively, I think it's 35% for RingCentral, about 25% for 8x8. That's good growth numbers. And so for me to be able to keep up with that or exceed that, I've got to have a better game plan. And so those are the things that keep me up at night is, hey, how do I maintain that growth? How do I get more growth? And quite frankly, up until we did the offering, it was always a challenge because we didn't have that dry powder. And so going out and investing in additional channel managers, or going out and investing in digital marketing programs, and going out and investing in our channel partners, it was difficult because up until 2018, 2019, we didn't have a tremendous amount of cash flow. Now that we've got cash flow and some additional dollars to go throw at our sales and marketing budgets, that's really going to open it up for us. So, the things that keep me up at night is, hey, how do I grow the business faster? I mean, the pandemic for a lot of businesses has been extremely scary because they're trying to figure out how they're going to maneuver through those waters. If there's a silver lining to the pandemic, and obviously there's no silver lining, but if there's any glimmer of opportunity out there in our industry, it's the fact that the pandemic has really forced businesses to reevaluate the work from home, collaborative type environments that we bring to the table. You may remember we did a presentation back in February for the Little Grapevine Community, and we talked about disaster recovery back in February, and we talked about disaster recovery in the sense of hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, or winter storms on the East Coast, or those kind of things. And we never talked about pandemics. We never talked about what happens if. And so when we think about the biggest change in our lives today, this pandemic, nobody would have thought, even at the beginning of 2020, that we would have shut down the country's businesses for months at a time, and that the new norm would be the work at home environment. So that's really played right into our solutions, because that's what we do. We do work from anywhere. We do work from home. We do collaboration. We do all of the things that unfortunately this pandemic has brought about in a much quicker fashion than people were ready for.
Has the pandemic allowed you to increase any footprint or make any headway internationally?
It hasn't really, because almost 99% of our business is domestic, and we haven't really focused internationally because we don't want to get distracted. I've seen a lot of businesses try and focus internationally when there's so much opportunity domestically, and it really can screw you up. So, I don't plan on getting defocused on international because there's so much opportunity here. Now, that being said, our phones will work anywhere you've got internet connectivity. So we've got a lot of customers that may have, we just sold a deal 3 weeks ago that has about 50 soft phone users that will be deployed in the Philippines for a call center application. So that's a great sale for us. So we are seeing more of those type applications coming up. They're US calls, they're US based phone numbers, but the phones are being deployed, or the users are being deployed internationally to take advantage of the lower labor costs and calling back into the States, or handling customer service calls from the States. So we are seeing more of that, but you're not going to go see us, take that dry powder that we've got and try and figure out how we can go set up shop in Europe. There's so much opportunity here in the States that we're going to take advantage of what we can in our backyard.
One of the metrics I think is important to a lot of investors, I know we've spoken before about, is the backlog and also deferred revenue. Could you give an update on the backlog, and maybe also how deferred revenue has kind of come into play with new accounts that are signing up?
Sure. So the backlog for us is the unrecognized revenue for customer contracts that are signed. And so our average size customer today is 20 stations. Our average revenue per account, $420 per month. And when we sign an account, so if we take that $420 a month customer, when we sign them up, we're typically signing them up for a 60-month contract, if not a 60-month contract, a 36-month contract. And so when we take revenue on that, we only take revenue on that 1/60th at a time. And so the remaining part of that contract goes into our backlog. So at the end of Q2 of 2020, our backlog number was north of 27 million, 27.3 million to be exact. That backlog revenue number is contracted revenue that we have that will be recognized over the course of the next 50 to 60 months. The majority of that is going to be in the first few years, and if you saw our presentation slides, you see how that scales out over the next 4 or 5 years. But right now, at the end of the 6-month period for 2020, we already had about $8.5 million worth of backlog queued up for 2021. So by the end of 2020, we'll have probably north of $10.5 million worth of revenue already queued up for 2021. So it's nice to know that we've already got more than half of our nut already covered at the beginning of the year for the whole year. So that recurring revenue is a key number as you consider Crexendo's growth, because we have almost 50-60% of our revenue already baked into that recurring revenue stream. So all new customers that come on get added to that revenue stream. But having that large backlog is extremely important for us, and extremely important for investors as they look at how does this play out over the next 4 or 5 years.
There's a follow-up question from Maj on the secondary that we had kind of touched on a little bit earlier, and Maj is asking, were you hoping for a better price on the secondary? Maybe talk to us about how you think that went. What grade would you give the secondary as far as how it went?
Yeah, we were disappointed, obviously, in the price point that it finally settled at, and our first S1 offering out there, the underwriters, we used B. Riley and we used Colliers, which was formerly Doherty and Company. And we had been talking to both of them for quite some time about going out and raising capital, and we had a nice uprun in the stock after we uplisted to the NASDAQ, and so we were hopeful that maybe that a stock offering would go out at a much higher price point. Unfortunately, I think what happened was when we put the S1 out, obviously following all the SEC guidelines, when we put the S1 out and said we were going to do an offering, there's not a lot of float in our stock, and so the stock was I don't want to use the word manipulated, but I think our stock was moved to the downward pressure because obviously there was an offering coming out a week later from the time we filed. So as we were doing our one-on-ones, there was tremendous institutional following from the one-on-ones that we had in the roadshow that we had for the S1. But quite frankly, we didn't have hardly any institutional following whatsoever prior to our offering. And so that stock just continued to drift down, almost to the point that we almost pulled the plug on the deal. But at that point, kind of like jumping out of a plane, you jump out of a plane and you got two choices: you pull the ripcord or you don't. As the stock, we hit some headwinds. It was a tough week in the market that week, and the market just continued to hammer our stock. So it was touch and go whether or not we would pull the plug on it. But we felt that taking the lower price point was probably an important step. So we took maybe a step back to get 2 steps forward. So that dry powder that we've got will help us get those acquisitions, help us put that money back into the organization, and hopefully we'll see that stock price back up in the double digits where it was just a few months back fairly shortly. So I mean all the execution points are there for the business. And so, the investors that we talked to when the price was coming down was, well, your price was here and it had a nice spike and it settled back out. So, I think that we can see that if we can continue to execute, we can see that price point get back up there. I think B. Riley came out with the analyst report on us just last week with a price target of 8. And so, we're hopeful that, we can execute and hopefully they'll revise that up as we continue to execute.
Okay. Yeah, great. Got another question from Maj here, and about 10 minutes left on the call today. So again, if anybody has any other questions for Doug, please feel free to write those into the chat. But Maj is asking back to the acquisitions that we again touched on earlier, although we kind of focused more on the creative nature of an acquisition. Maj's question is more about, do you think there's any, I guess, possibility that there might be something that helps out the platform with the acquisition or some sort of gap that gets filled in or newer feature?
Yeah, obviously, as we look at acquisitions, revenue stream is first and foremost, but secondarily to that would be any technology that would fill any voids in our offering. And so, we've got a really solid offering, but there are some areas that we could see some benefit from a technology perspective. So some of the discussions that we have out there have a technology component to them, and that would be a nice additional add. So if we can find the right acquisition that's got a technology component that complements what we're already doing out there, that's definitely in the cards, and so we're excited about some of the discussions we've got in place right now, because if they come to fruition, it could be a nice additional technical advantage for us.
We talked about the web hosting services business kind of early on. You explained how that's where that's going, and how that's likely to not even be really reported on much anymore. Maj's follow-up question to that was just if in this process, or I guess over the course of that conversion, have you seen a percentage of that customer base actually convert over to the UCaaS platform, or is that not even something that's relevant?
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's not too relevant, because most of the web services customers that we have are really SOHO entrepreneur type setups. So it's not it wasn't really the web services that we were doing in the former life of the company was more of a B2C, business to consumer type sale, as opposed to a B2B. So the majority of the website hosting that we still do today, the majority of those businesses are SOHO consumer type relationships. And so there's not, our average size sale, as I mentioned, is 20 stations. So the average web customer out there is probably a 1 or 2 man operation running a website out of their house, and it's not really conducive for our UCaaS type offering.
Okay, got it. And another question here: has headcount increased for Crexendo in the last few months, or I guess over the last year? And what are your plans for hiring going forward?
Yeah, it has just a little bit. So I think at the end of Q2, we were at 60 employees. And so, our growth plans are to continue to hire, as I mentioned, hiring some sales reps and some channel managers on the partner side to be able to grow the sales numbers. We've got a really strong infrastructure set up. So, I can raise my revenues without having to have a lot of extra support infrastructure wise, because that's one of the beauties of being on the cloud, is that I don't have bodies out there that have to go install these, and so customer service and support wise, I can add a lot of customers before I have to add another customer service representative. It's not a 1-to-1 type ratio. So we will see an increase in our headcount, but not a dramatic increase, and the increase will be more primarily on sales, maybe secondarily to that, more on the engineering side as we continue to build new features and capabilities into the platform.
All right, and last question here, Doug. We thank you again for your time today. It's been very informative. But if you could talk a little bit, I believe you have a strong relationship with U.S. Cellular, and that's an important kind of sales partner for Crexendo. Maybe talk about just the strength of that partnership and any new developments with that.
Yeah, it's been a great partnership. They will be our largest partner by far this year, probably on the tune of 3 times larger almost than our next largest partner. Last year, they were just barely our largest partner, and 2 years ago, they were just coming on as a partner. So that relationship has been extremely strong. They're an exclusive partner with Crexendo, and so it's been a great relationship on both sides of the equation. We are excited that when we first launched the program and up until earlier part of this year, it was only focused on their direct sales offerings. They've got an agent reseller program out there that's got over 400 agents and resellers. And so they've just launched that at the beginning part of this year. Now, obviously, COVID slowed that down a little bit, but the agent program is starting to sell our solutions as well. And we're seeing a nice uptick on that. So I couldn't be more pleased with the relationship there, and I think they would say the same. And it's just been a great partnership. And so as we think about how that relationship works, U.S. Cellular and now their agents have business relationships with business customers that use their phones for their mobile services. And so they're going out there and they're basically just identifying opportunities and throwing them over the fence to our U.S. Cellular sales team here at Crexendo And then our sales team will find those or do the due diligence on those opportunities, propose those opportunities, and sell them in conjunction with the U.S. Cellular representative that's already got that trusted advisor relationship with the customer. And so it's really a win-win type scenario. We just sold a deal just last month that was about a 50-phone deal that was a U.S. Cellular direct deal for a municipality in the Midwest. And they brought us into this relationship that they already had. They already had the cellular service for this municipality. They saw that the municipality was thinking about changing out their business phone system. They said, "Hey, we do that now. Can we look at what you're trying to do and see if we can give you a bid?" We were able to go in there and show them cost savings right off the bat. And so, since it's a municipality, they would typically go out to an RFP. But since there was cost savings and it wasn't going to cost the municipality any money, we were able to show them a better solution with cost savings right out of the gate. They didn't even go out to a competitive bid, and they signed up with us in about a 2-week period. So it was a nice size sale. And that's the type of relationship we have there. So they bring us in as that trusted advisor. And many times we can win that business without that competitive force of an 8x8 or a Vonage or an Avaya getting into the picture.
Yeah, that's great to hear. One last comment from Maj. He just wanted me to make sure to bring up again that it is really impressive that Crexendo has been able to grow the business essentially from ground zero to where it is today without really raising much capital at all. And it's a testament, I think, to the strength of the management with you and Steve and the rest of the team there. So it's exciting to get these updates. And as we've talked along the way, I think what stood out to me is Crexendo always sets a goal, and you guys have executed and consistently hit those goals along the path over the months. And it's a good thing that's very encouraging from an investor perspective to see that. And one of the reasons why at Grapevine and at Geo we emphasize working with high quality managers like yourselves and good companies. So excited to hear that. But I think, Doug, I'll turn it over to you for any closing remarks that you have. Otherwise, I think we're done with questions for today.
Hey, greatly appreciate it. We love the relationship. We've got the Little Grapevine Community, and Ed and Maj, we appreciate your support. And we really feel like we've got the rocket fuel now to take this rocket ship to the next level. So, we've done a nice job of getting to where we are today. And as Maj said, without a lot of capital infusion. And so now that we've got that extra rocket fuel, we're ready and poised to go to the next level. So, as I mentioned early on, I grew up around the space program. And so, sorry about the corny analogy about the rocket ship, but, I really think, and then if you watch I'm a huge Elon Musk fan. And if you watch the SpaceX launch of the Dragon and how exciting that was, we feel like we're poised to do the same thing. So strap in and enjoy the ride.
Well, let's get Elon to use a Crexendo phone system from space. That'd be pretty cool.
I would like that. We could just launch one out there like he launched the Tesla, right?
Yeah, well, Doug, this has been a great hour that we've had with you today. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the investors and audience that we've had join today's call. And I know other investors that watch this later appreciate these updates and access that we're able to get with the management of Crexendo, be able to submit questions and hear an update on the business. And it's also nice just to have kind of more of an informal chat on the company. So we hope that you'll do this again. I also hope that our participants and listeners got a lot out of this call today. And if you have any suggestions or other questions that you'd like to submit to Doug, we're happy to facilitate that. And Doug, once again, thank you for your time. And on behalf of Maj, whose microphone's not really working that well, and myself and the rest of the team here at Grapevine, we look forward to talking to you again, and thank you for the update.
Great. Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, bye.